Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, I help someone get revenge on their gold-digging ass of and so. He ruined my sister's only birth experience, so I made sure he'd never forget her. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. I help someone get revenge on their gold-digging ass of and so. This happened some years ago but was just reminded of it, so here you go, Reddit. I worked as a front desk agent in a large luxury hotel chain for some years. One particular hotel I worked at was located really close to the downtown area, and so we got a large number of young, very wealthy, business people who loved to party. I usually worked the second and third shifts, which meant I got to see loads of drunken hookups, breakups, cheating, hookers, and more. This particular one though, this is one I will never forget. I was working at the desk when a group of young, well-dressed men come walking in. They've all clearly been drinking, but aren't so drunk that they can't walk right and hold a conversation. One of them comes up to me and tells me that while he and his friends were at the bar, a woman was hitting on him, and even though he told her no multiple times, she wouldn't stop. So he and his friends left, and it wasn't until they got in the Uber that he realized he didn't have his room key anymore. He thinks she took it and he's concerned that she may come up to his room. He asked that I deactivate his keys, and if she does come up to the hotel to not let her in. When he was telling me all of this, it didn't sit right with me. He and his friends were all grinning about it and snickering amongst one another. Then he gave a clear description of her, without being asked. Told me height, body shape, hair color and style, the kind of dress she was wearing. All while saying it in a mocking tone. Now, this could have easily been because he thought the whole thing was ridiculous, or was too drunk to take it seriously, but it really didn't sound right to me. Either way, I did as I was trained in that situation. I pulled up his reservation, deactivated the keys as requested, made him a new set when he showed me his ID, and even offered to move him to a new room if that would make him feel more comfortable. He and his buddies all laughed a little at that, and he declined, took the keys, and they went to their room. About an hour or so later, the woman he described showed up. Now, by this point, my relief for the night had also shown up and was sitting at the front desk, while I was in the back office counting down my cash drawer. I hadn't had a chance to tell him about the woman. Just as I'm walking out of the back office with my bag and about to leave, I see my coworker buzz the doors open and the woman comes rushing in, cuts through the lobby and down the hall to the elevators. She was barefoot, holding her heels in her hands, and knew exactly where she was going. I rushed up to him and told him what the man from before had told me about her. My coworker looked at me confused. He then pointed to the screen that had the reservation pulled up and told me that when the woman arrived, she went to use the room keys and they didn't work. So he asked for her room number and last name. She gave both and her name is on the reservation. I looked at the reservation and down in the notes, there was a woman's name listed. The man from before was listed as the primary, but her name was listed as secondary with his consent to be in the room. I was confused. I thought maybe she wasn't the same woman he was talking about. But, to be on the safe side, I called the man in his room and told him the situation, and that we allowed a woman, fitting that description he gave, to enter the building because she confirmed her name was on the room. He laughed, said he forgot her name was on the room, and asked that I remove it. I was now super confused. I asked to make sure. Me, sir, just to be clear, the woman you met at the bar tonight was with you at check-in hours ago and was allowed keys then, but now she is not. Him, laughs to all his friends in the room. Oh, guys, I confused the poor girl. Gets back on the phone with me. Yes, sweetheart, she's banned from the room. Don't worry about the other details, just take her name off. Me, I see. Then, if she isn't going to be on the room anymore, would you like us to call the police and have her removed from the property? Him, ha ha ha, whoa. That's too far there. Don't worry, she'll get the hint soon enough. We ended the call there, and I got really suspicious of this. I told my coworker to not do anything, and that I was going to stick around for a bit to see if anything happened. A short time later the woman came off the elevator, pouring tears, sobbing while on the phone with someone. She sat down in our lobby and my coworker, and I tried to look busy, while eavesdropping hard on her phone call. She was sobbing on the phone to her mom and sister. From what she told them, she was invited out to spend the week with her boyfriend meeting all of his old college buddies. This being their first night, they all met up for dinner and drinks. After a bit, she went to the restroom, and when she came back she caught her boyfriend hitting on another woman. His friends all bet that he wouldn't do it. When she confronted him pissed off, he called her a bunch of names and humiliated her in front of his friends and the entire bar. All of his friends joined in on mocking her, and he threw in her face that she was nothing without him and dumped her right there. He and his friends then took an Uber back and left her stranded at the bar with no money and no way back. She then had to use her phone's GPS and walk back to the hotel from the bar, barefoot. She had heels, and walking 2 miles in those was not going to cut it. She was asking her mom and sister for help as he wouldn't let her in the room to get her luggage or her wallet. My heart broke. I felt horrible. I helped this guy treat this poor woman like crap, and now he and all his friends were up there laughing at her while she's sitting in our lobby sobbing, and with nothing. I went over to our snacks area in the lobby, grabbed her a bottled water, and brought it to her. I told her that I couldn't help but overhear the conversation, and was very sorry for her situation and asked if she would like us to help. I informed her that if he was keeping her from getting to her things, we could call the police and have them force him to hand over her things so she could leave if she'd like. Or if she wanted to let her mom or sister pay for a room, we'd be happy to give her a very low rate in a room far from him. She thanked me, took the water, and tried to calm down and talk to me about what all was happening and what her options were. Eventually, we decided on her staying in the hotel for the night and figuring out the rest in the morning. As we make it to the desk, she asks me to try and run her credit card to see if it has enough on it for another room. I ask her what she means by another room, and she tells me that she's actually paying for the room he's in. That his name is on the room because he booked it, but it's her card paying for everything. This intrigued me. I asked why she was paying for the room if it was in his name. She told me that she's the one with a job, not him. That he hasn't been able to find a job in his field since graduating from college, and is essentially living off of his parents' money. But just after they started dating, his parents cut him off, so he's been living off of her money. That's why she was so upset and confused by how he had been acting all night. He was sweet and doing everything for her back home, but since he met up with his friends he did a 180 and hasn't been the same guy the entire time. I wanted to tell her that it was obvious he was using her for the money, and that he would probably blame his friends for all of this and try to get back with her later on. But I doubted she would have listened to me or cared for a complete stranger to butt in on her personal life like that. So instead, I offered up a sweet piece of revenge. I informed her that, considering she's the one paying for the room, if she can confirm that it is her card on file with some sort of photo ID and verify the last 4 digits of the card number, that's honestly all this hotel company required, then she could, if she wanted to, kick him out of the room and keep it all to herself. But, considering how poorly her night has been, if she were indeed able to prove she is the one paying for the room, then I'd be more than happy to provide for her the biggest luxury upgrade we offered at our property. Largest suite we had, full hotel amenity access. I'd even have my coworker fish out a bottle of champagne and some fresh strawberries for her to have sent to her room. All free of charge. She was taken aback by the offer and was very sincerely tempted. She looked like she was about to say no. Then I told her that since she would be upgrading her room, that would require moving her things from that room and into her new one. Which mean the room that she is currently listed in would need to be vacated immediately. If anyone were to remain in the room after we have demanded it be vacated, we are required to have them escorted off the property or they pay for the room. Their choice. She then thought about it, pulled up her card's banking app and showed me the screen. It had a photo of her, her full name, the card's full number, and the hold from our hotel for the room. She asked if that worked. It was good enough for me. I quickly upgraded her, moved everything over in the system, and before I could say a word to my coworker he was already grabbing a set of master keys, a belt cart, and was asking her what her luggage looked like since he would be the one retrieving it for her to deliver to her room. He didn't want her to have to deal with her ex again. She smiled and told him which ones were hers and that she hadn't unpacked yet. My coworker runs down to the elevators and up to fetch her things, while I make her a new set of keys and send her off to her new room. Once she's on the elevator, my phone at the desk starts ringing. It's the ex-boyfriend and he's very angry about why my coworker has entered the room and is taking her things. I calmly explain that I cannot give out the private information of any of our guests, and that if he would like to remain in his room he will need to pay for it as there is no longer a method of payment on his room. He blow up. He's making a ton of demands and at the same time yelling at my coworker to stop what he's doing, but it's obvious from the way he's yelling at him that my coworker isn't listening to him. I can even hear the guy's friends telling him to chill out and just pay for the room. I then explain that we will give him a courtesy 10 minutes to make a decision. At which point, if he doesn't have payment ready, then he must vacate the building, or we will be forced to call the authorities and have him evicted. He continues to yell at me. He screams, swears, threatens, and yells for a solid minute before taking a breath. I then tell him he has 9 minutes remaining and asks if he has come to a decision yet. He hangs up on me. 9 minutes later, I call the room and he doesn't answer. I call again, no answer. I call a third time, he picks up, then immediately hangs up. I call the police and tell them what's going on, and they said they're on their way. The officers arrive, I tell them what's going on, we go up to the room together, and the man and his friends are all white as ghosts when they see the cops. The cops explain to the ex-boyfriend and his friends that they're being evicted. The ex-BF starts trying to talk to me, but the cops stop him and tell him to only talk to them. I told him about his attitude on the phone before. The friends are all offering to pay for the room at this point, and the cops look to me and ask if that would be acceptable. I smile very sweetly and say no, and the cops nod and start rushing all of the guys to grab their things and leave the room. The ex-BF is the last one out the door carrying his 2 bags and complaining that he isn't even given a luggage cart and has to carry his own things. His friends all look pissed at him. I go with the officers to escort all of them out of the building and run into my coworker in the lobby. He waits until they're all outside in the parking lot to tell me that the woman is in her new room, loves it, and said no to the champagne, she just wanted to sleep. I didn't get to see her before she left town the next day, but the ex-BF did try calling our hotel to complain a number of times, and even tried leaving some bad reviews of us online and lied through all of it. I hope she doesn't have to ever deal with him again. He ruined my sister's only birth experience, so I made sure he'd never forget her. Here's our cast. My sister will call her Sarah for the story. Sister's ex-BF Paul. Ex-BF's new wife Jane. Ex-BF's parents Mr. and Mrs. Doe. Oldest brother Zeke. Our parents. And me, smiley face. When I was 14 and my oldest sister, Sarah, was 22, we found out that she was pregnant with Paul, her boyfriend of 4 years. They immediately got engaged, and they were really happy. For a time. Sarah had a horrible pregnancy, about 16 to 18 weeks, and the wonder of creating a human life evaporated within her. She developed hyperemesis, which if you don't know is really bad morning sickness. She was constantly in pain, she developed gestational diabetes, and just all around hated the experience. Around this time Paul, the then fiancé, started getting sick of the complaining. I believe the argument was your body is built to do this, it can't be that bad. Sarah was due around Valentine's Day, and Paul's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Doe, were very excited, both about the grandkid and the fact that he could be born on a holiday. She was very against that and really hoped that her son wouldn't be born on a holiday, even one as small as Valentine's Day. Her birthday sometimes falls on Easter, and she hates it, because it might make him feel that his day isn't very much about him. Well, Mrs. Doe says something like, well, if you name him Valentine or Valentino, then that'll make the day even more special to him. Again, sister hated the idea. She thought it was tacky, he'd be bullied for it, and just really didn't like the name Valentino. Paul loved it, but agreed to go with a more average name like Daniel or Jared. Fast forward to February, and she was ready to get this over with. Sarah had officially been put on bed rest because while standing or walking her blood pressure took unexpected spikes and dips. I look back now and goodness do I feel bad for her. She was doing her best to avoid giving birth on Valentine's Day because, again, she didn't want him born on a holiday. Unfortunately, births happen when they happen, and that baby was going to come on Valentine's Day whether she wanted him to or not. I remember waiting out in the waiting room with my dad, brothers, and Paul, who couldn't stand to be in the delivery room because it was gross. I was so mad that he could have gone in, but wouldn't because he thought my sister was gross while giving birth, whereas I had to stay outside because I was too young to go in with my mom and other sister. Dad went home with the youngest 2 brothers while the oldest, Zeke, stayed to watch me because I refused to leave. 16 hours after Sarah went into labor, my little nephew was officially part of the family on the evening of Valentine's Day. Unfortunately, Sarah was not okay. She had to have an emergency cesarean section, and while doing the operation discovered that the back of her uterus, facing her spinal cord, had a very large and very severe, thankfully non-cancerous, tumor. When I say large, I mean it was twice the size of a standard uterus. The doctors were shocked and didn't understand why nobody had noticed it on an ultrasound. It accounted for her severe back pain and blood pressure issues. The doctors immediately went in for more surgery to remove the tumor, but sadly ended up having to perform a full hysterectomy. This meant that my nephew would be Sarah's only child. Now, while Sarah was in for surgery, Paul was taking care of everything baby-related to make sure his son was okay. In my 14-year-old self's memory, I remember him being suitably distraught, but I didn't really pay him much mind and spent my time in the waiting room with my mother and other sister. Zeke, however, wanted to be a good future brother-in-law and make sure that Paul was okay. He found Paul filling out the baby paperwork on his own, looking, in my brother's words, like he had not a single worry in his mind. Zeke asked why Paul didn't wait for Sarah to fill out the paperwork, as she should have been put of surgery within the hour, and Paul said that he just wanted her to get her rest and heal. That checked out with Zeke, as he was 16 and didn't know any better at the time. Now I know what you're probably thinking. No, he wouldn't. He knows how much she hates that name. And still, she'd need to sign the paperwork too. My fellow peoples of Reddit, I regret to inform you that Paul forged Sarah's signature on the paperwork and waited until she was out of surgery to hand said paperwork over. My sweet nephew, that was born on Valentine's Day, was named Valentino on his first official birth certificate. I still to this day don't know why Paul and his family were so insistent about the name. He had even picked out a different one with my sister. And before you ask, no, he was never brought up on forgery charges because his parents were witnesses to her signing the papers, even though they only got there at the last minute. So Sarah dumped him and got her son's name changed a month later. She was willing to do split custody with him because that's her son's father and she wants the kid to know him, but Paul vanished and she never heard anything back, which seemed weirdly out of character to us. Until a mutual friend on Facebook was tagged in his wedding pictures 6 months later. Paul had apparently started cheating on her not long after she got pregnant. Sarah was livid, but there wasn't much she could do, so she filed for child support and continued to live her best life. Until 6 years later. This is where the revenge starts, my friends. So Sarah has been a single mother for the past 6 years and has been amazing at it. At this point in my career, I've been a hairdresser for about 8 months at our local Great Clips. I'm working one day, and who is seated before me but Jane, Paul's wife, herself. I take her back for a trim, and she clearly has no idea who I am. That adds up because a mutual friend that still keeps in contact with Paul said that Jane doesn't know a thing. She has no idea about Sarah, that she was the other woman, or that Paul actually has a kid that he's been, infrequently, paying child support for. She's in the dark on it all. I told myself not to be an ass and treat her like a normal customer, which I did. Now at this point, Jane was heavily pregnant, so a lot of our conversation was about that. She loved being pregnant, but it was hard. Her husband was so unsympathetic, big shocker, and she was due in 10 weeks, and they still hadn't picked out a name for their baby girl. Ladies and gentle peoples, this was my chance. I asked what kind of name she was looking for, and she said, I want something unique and unusual, but not ridiculous like Brantley, you know the ones I'm talking about, and Paul had suggested so many already, and she didn't like any of them. So I, conniving little weasel I am, said, what about Sarah? My sister's name isn't actually Sarah. She was named after an older family member that passed not long after she was born, but there was no female equivalent for his name, so our parents created one. It's a beautiful name and just what Jane was looking for. She loved it, she stuck by it, and I found out by stalking her Facebook months later that she had put her foot down about it, and that was their daughter's name. Now Paul has a daughter with his ex's name to remind him every day about her, and to also remind him to pay his child support. Little nephew is 10 years old now with a new name and no contact with his biological father, though we do still sometimes call him Val as a family nickname. He likes it but doesn't want to bring it to school, so it's staying a family nickname. Sarah pretends to hate when we call him that, in a joking way. As long as he likes it, she doesn't have a problem with it. And she's seeing a new guy who's really great and like a father to Val. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.